Well, welcome to the Diabetes Health Show, everyone. I have been looking forward to this episode because it's an area I'm very interested in and been exploring as I'm sure a complete hack and amateur. And today I'm going to take it to pro level with Dr. Joseph Antoun as we talk about fasting mimicking diets. Dr. Antoun, thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for hosting me. What a pleasure to know that you are a faster. And now that it's the number one kind of lifestyle in the US, we would rather define it and help people, on board and understand the benefits. And we
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I've been doing this for long enough to remember when intermittent fasting was presented and a lot of people just wondered, is this a passing fad? Is this just the next keto or the next, you name it, the next named thing that's going to come and go from the health space? But then the research started coming out, and then it started pouring out. And then finally we got some decent research on women because all the initial research was on a man. But now across all spectrum, older men, younger men, menopausal women, younger women, athletes, non-athletes, weight loss, weight gain. Every possible study has been done, and we're finding this really is a great lifestyle.
it is because it's natural, right? I mean, you hit right on point. All other diets are fads because they're not natural. We should not live on fat every day and call it keto and super low carb. We should not be eating probably meat every day. That's not natural. It's not the balance of life. And what the way we're eating today is a fad, which we eat most of the day and we snack late at night and we order Uber Eats. So actually, what we're calling in a fancy way fasting and intermittent fasting is just actually rebalancing us with what we're supposed to eat. If you look back historically, we never had the luxury to stock food in the fridge and eat anytime middle of the night or eat in the morning and have the food ready and all of that. And we are creatures of daylight, and the 12 hour of eating when the light is up and going back and stop eating, around the 6, 7-ish o'clock and or 8 o'clock, and then the next day when the sun is up, having some time to then go and eat. Still have breakfast because that's historically part of the human diet. So what I'm trying to say is that fasting is the natural phenomenon. It's staying without food now. We call it in a fancy way fasting, but this is how our ancestors lived for hundreds of thousands of years. They were not snacking all night, and doing it at least the 12-12 is a natural.
Yes.
And now we have 73% of America is overweight. So we tell some, hey, go a little bit longer than 12 hours because you're going to lose that weight. And we can talk a little bit more about that. But what I'm trying to say is, for the first time, a natural phenomenon that the body has embraced for hundreds of thousands of years, we're bringing it back to our lives.
we're,
Not a
we're
fad.
bringing
Everything else is a fad. This is what I'm trying to say.
yeah, we've gone through all the fads. Now we're going back to what actually
Exactly.
works, and we're taking
It's-
our incredibly unhealthy society
yeah.
back into ancient wisdom and natural circadian rhythms. I'm going to read your bio really quick for those who don't know you, Doctor. So let me just read that real quick. But Dr. Joseph Antoun is CEO and chairman of the board of L-Nutra, a member of the Forbes Business Development Council. He's the former CEO of Health Systems Reform, a boutique consultancy aimed at improving public health by reforming health systems management and delivery. Prior to that, he was director of health policy at the University of Chicago, editor-in-chief of the Journal of Health Systems and Reform, and head of business development for Eli Lilly. And he completed his studies in public policy at Harvard and public health at Johns Hopkins University, and his doctorate in medicine and master's in medical and biological sciences at St. Joseph University. That's quite a resume, Doctor.
There's a PhD there that I also don't put up because then I'll be too much of a geek for
It's
folks.
too much.
Yeah, too much.
What's your other PhD?
I'm actually so that ties a little bit to my personal story. I started by going to med school. I had the passion to help patients,
Yeah.
and then right upon graduation, I wanted to be a cardiologist, and I did my rotations in cardiology, and I was like, I'm just seeing people after they're sick. So I'm practicing sick care, not health care. And I'm not able to cure any one of them. I still have the guy with the cholesterol. I still give him that pill for every day. The guy with the high blood sugar, I still have to give him the pill. And by the way, next year, another pill. And by the way, next year, another pill. And by the way, in 5 years, insulin. So I was like, what are we doing here? We're just keeping people, we manage their disease and try to stabilize their sickness. And then and it's not working. So my first intuition is like, hey, we got to change the health system. So this is why leading while you were reading that bio, you see a lot of health policy, public health, and health system reform. I was like, we got to change the healthcare system, and we got to push it more towards prevention. And everything follows financials. And if you don't invest into
Follow the money.
if you don't create the incentive for somebody to be healthy, then you're not going to get that, even though you can preach them every day. We all know that we should be healthy, we should exercise. And that was the gap. So I did go and I helped a lot of governments in health policy reform, and I specialized in that. But it wasn't working. There was no market, there was no investment, there's no stimulus to be healthy. And the pharmaceutical market has done very well in creating a market for a pill. I was like, let's create a market for preventing diseases and healthy aging and keeping people healthy. So I started shopping for what could be an intervention that can slow down aging or that can help people age in a healthier way, because then you prevent all these chronic diseases that are related to unhealthy lifestyles. And this is when I got introduced to fasting. And a lot of the aging leaders and nutrition leaders were pointing at Professor Walter Longo, who's the primary researcher behind all this wealth of studies on fasting, and he discovered what fasting does to the body, and how many hours and how many days, and then discovered that if you go a little bit longer, you start helping your cells, not just your metabolism, and develop the fasting mimicking diet to help people go longer. I'm pretty sure we're going to talk all about this, but that head researcher, Walter Longo, was behind attracting me to that field and trying to come and join him into bringing back fasting and longevity to the world, or healthy aging to go the right way.
What year was it when you were introduced to fasting as a health lifestyle?
It was 2013. I met the CEO of the Buck Institute for Research on Aging.
Can I interrupt you for a second? Do you have something on your computer that's doing notifications?
Oh yeah. Slow that up. Okay.
Like every now and then we're getting interrupted by a dinging sound, and I was checking my computer to see if it was me, but hopefully that solved the problem. So 2013. Now that will seem early to people who, fasting diets generally. When would you say they really gained mainstream awareness and popularity?
There have been a lot of attempts historically to bring fasting to society, but two things, I think, or three things were landmark that happened in the span of 2016, 2017, that I think were the trigger point to get back fasting and have a deep penetration within human lifestyle. Number one is the wealth of studies that USC, University of Southern California, under Walter Longo, who's again the grandfather of that science. Time magazine nominated him among the top 50 most influential people in health for bringing back fasting to the world. So a lot of groundbreaking studies in mice and in humans that he developed, and then he started showing. For him, fasting is like a medicine. So he puts all the lab trials, the mice trials, and then the human trials behind it. So you have a very robust publications happening in Nature and Science and Cell, the top 3 scientific journals. So that's event number one. Event number two, 2016, the Nobel Prize in Medicine and Physiology was on autophagy, which happens with fasting. Meaning the cells, for the first time, were showing that fasting acts not just by calorie deficit. So fasting, when you're fasting, you have a calorie deficit and you lose the weight, and there's a lot of improvement, metabolic, downstream improvement happening there. But also we learned that fasting acts by stress. And when the cell is stressed that it's not being well fed, it actually epigenetically turns a protectionist mechanism and starts fixing itself, start rejuvenating, a process we call autophagy. And that process won the Nobel Prize in Medicine. It was a Japanese researcher that identified it. So you have a Nobel Prize in 2016. You have all the research from Walter Longo, which started 15 years ago. And then you have the fasting mimicking diet, which is To rejuvenate the cell, you need to fast for longer than 2 days. A lot of people argue, is it 1 day, 2 days, 3 days? But it depends on the metabolism, on your weight, on a lot of things we can talk about. But we're almost for sure that after 2 days or 3 days, you're going to be rejuvenating your cells. And nobody wants to water fast for 3 or 4. For very few people would do that. So USC developed the fasting mimicking diet, USC and us at L-Nutra, which is a food you eat and keeps you in a fasting mode. For the first time ever, you can spend now 3 days or 5 days eating a special food formulation, and your body stays in a fasting mode. So fasting became easier to do, and a lot more people can comply with it. 91%, the statistics show that 91% of people successfully go on a fasting mimicking diet. So you had the best-in-class science, a Nobel Prize, and making fasting easier for people when they have the option to fast with food.
Yeah, I mean, I was a late adopter of fasting, and it's for a very simple reason, and that is I don't like fasting. I like food. I like to eat.
There's like
I
7 billion people like you just saying.
just like everyone else on the planet, right?
Yeah,
And the word fasting is negative, right? Going without. We
yeah,
live in a modern society where, like you said, food is always available.
yeah,
Food is generally delicious. We all like food. Now, we also like to be healthy, and we also don't like to be overweight, and we don't like to feel bad. We don't like to get to the top of a flight of stairs and be huffing and puffing. So it's quite an interesting concept, right? Now for me, I've kept it very, very simple. I almost never do more than a 24-hour fast. So but I do a lot of 16 to 18-hour fasts pretty much every day, 7 days a week. It's very rare, actually, maybe 2 or 3 times a month, that I am not doing a 16 to 18-hour fast on a daily basis. That took me a while. The first 60 days, I did not like it at all. I was miserable. To not have a snack while watching TV with my wife in the evening was actually really tough for about 60 days. But since then,
all this
I
means
think,
you don't know of the fast bar. This is
was
what
that?
the fast bar. You don't know about the fast bar. This is what it means. We'll talk about it later, but we
Let's just talk about it now. I didn't have much more to say. I just wanted you to get a feel for this is where I'm coming from. I have a feeling there's quite a few people like me that we maybe are maybe in betweeners to the
yeah,
serious fasters. We
yeah,
don't do the 3-day thing. Every now and then, my longer fast is simply I might have dinner on a Saturday night, and oftentimes on a Sunday where I'm doing less activity. It's an easier day. It's a relaxing day for me. And often on a Sunday, I will just skip breakfast and lunch and just maybe eat a light meal at 2 or 3, and then dinner. That's about as long as I go.
yeah. So what you just said applies to most people. Most people are like, hey, I'm scared to go to 16, and first, should I go to 16 or 18 hours? Is it healthy to do that? What is it for? What does the science say? And we'll uncover all this now, actually. So because that's the most important. When something becomes big, you have every day a book about it. You have every day somebody gives an opinion, and unfortunately, they don't look at science, or they don't have the right science behind it. But this is where we come from. So at least I'll tell
Okay.
you what articles, meta-analysis, and randomized clinical trials have shown, and then we can go from there.
Let's hear it.
Yeah,
Dump the science on us.
yeah. So what we're sure about is that doing 12 hours every day, because humanity slept with the sun, woke up with the sun, and then went for food. So 12, 14 hours is actually part of our development, part of our diet for hundreds of thousands of years. And this is what rematches our body with the way it is. So the way we're eating today, late night snacking and early food, this is not normal. And doing 12, max 14 hours, this is should be part of everyone's diet. And we call it fasting. It should just be normal eating.
Good
Now,
point. I like that.
the question is, okay, should I go to 16? Should I do 18? And this is where you go an unnatural way, right? And how you know it's unnatural? Your body is hungry. You say, hey, I need to eat. I need to eat. You're telling me it's difficult. And this is where you start hitting into unnatural way. And so
Okay.
what we believe in, first of all, if you study people who live 100 and beyond, the centenarians, and we study them around the world, right? We go to
Yep.
the longevity zones, the blue zones, and we study them. And For those who want to learn more how to adopt that diet, the longevity diet, again, our founder, Professor Longo, has written the Longevity Diet book. I seriously recommend people buy that book. It was Amazon bestseller, Longevity Diet book. So one of the pillars of our science, we study people who live 100 and beyond. Right? We all see we're going to do that. Well, let's go and see what they do. And they don't do 16, 18 hours or a full day with no food. But they do that intermittent fasting of 12 to 14 hours. They're not late night snackers. They're not like and they do have breakfast. Sometimes a little bit later in the morning, sometimes not, but they do have breakfast. So if you think about humans, the way humans supposed to be, meaning normal weight 67 years ago, you don't need to do 16, 18, and 20 hours of fast. Now, the problem is 73% of us are overweight. And this is why a lot of doctors today, and intermittent fasting doctors or health coaches or others say, hey, do it. Because 73% of us benefit on the short term from losing weight of going a little bit longer. Yeah. And so what I'm trying to explain is 16 and 18 and 20 is not for everyone, because everything comes at a cost. Once you take your body off homeostasis, off what's used to, and you're stressing it to 20 hours, there are positives and there are negatives. The positives, okay, you lose the weight unless you binge eat right after that. But the negatives also, you have a headache. It means your brain is calling for calories and you're not getting those. You have a heart that has to pump all the day. You're moving during the day when you're hungry, right? At night is when you're resting. So fasting at night is much easier than fasting on the body, on the essential organs. Yeah. So there's a call for calorie, and there's a gap in calories. This is why you lose the weight, but a lot of your essential organs are being stressed. And so we recommend that you do 16 or 18 hours if you're overweight, if you're pre-diabetic, and a lot of doctors are using fasting, for patients with diabetes, just to help them lose the weight.
Can I pause you there and throw something out? So one of the things that compelled me to go a little bit longer is the concept that during the fasted state, your immune system is hard at work, taking care of pathogens, carcinogens, viruses, bacteria. There's this sense that in the fasted state, we wake up, our hormones are in a great state, right? Estrogen and testosterone are high, HGH is high. It's a fantastic state for meditation and paradoxically for working out and for thinking, for writing, where our brain is at its best, etc. Now, one of the theories I'd like you to address is that from that last meal, let's say 6 o'clock the previous evening, that until you have that first meal, your hormones are really in an ideal state that morning, and that your body's immune system is more successfully combating toxins, especially because you're not adding any more into the body. Do you have anything to say about that? Is it true? I mean, for me, one of the things I have noticed anecdotally, for me personally, I used to get sick every year. Even when I was very healthy and at high levels of competition, I would often get a flu that would wipe me out for a week at a time. I'd get a seasonal cold that would take forever to seem to go away. And since I have been intermittent fasting of generally first maybe 14 hours for the first year or two, and now I'm up to the 16 or 18 that I mentioned, I do sense that is the case. But what is the science on that? And can you talk about this corollary issue to the calorie burn, which you covered very well just then? But am I correct in assuming that a little bit longer fast is also helping with our immune system response?
Well, I'll answer it in two ways. Number one, there's no randomized clinical trial that would show you specifically that you went to 16 or 18 versus you just are eating healthy and you rematch your body after 12, 14, meaning the 12 to 14 hours may have been the reason. It doesn't mean it was 16 or 18. Okay, what we know is that people living 100 and above are not snacking at night, and they're not, so we know that 12 hours, that time restricted eating, the natural one, 12 to 14, is probably one of the pillars of longevity. That we know. So you might have been experiencing the benefits from that. I don't know if it was worth it to add 2 hours or an extra 2 hours after. Maybe you're helping, I don't know, on immunity, but maybe also you're paying the cost on brain that has to switch ketone, no ketone every day. We call it the yo-yo effect. On the heart that has to pump regardless, on the kidney that have to work. So I don't know what suffered in your body at the same time. And there's no randomized clinical trial to show if you add 2 hours, are you hurting more or hurting less then. But what I know is
Okay.
that your body tells you, the body doesn't tell you I'm weak at hour 12 or 13. At hour 16, your body is telling you, hey, I have a little bit of headache, you feel fatigued. And we listen to the body because we believe that optimization comes from aligning your lifestyle with hundreds of thousands of years of evolution and epigenetics. And
Okay.
so my intuition is I think 12 to 14 probably helped you the most, but I have no trials. And when I have no trials, I'm a physician and I do no harm first. I don't know. I would say
Okay.
in flat open. But what I know is that the longer fast comes at a cost. And in the
Okay.
entire existence of our company, we develop food for fasting is to help that prolongation of fast to get the benefits without having to go through hunger and deprivation. Well,
Okay.
all
So let's
is built to give you that
okay.
because
So let's talk about that then. Before we jump into your foods and products, actually, I want to stay on the theory just a little bit longer. So, what are your thoughts on extended fasts? So,
yeah.
we've established that 12 to 14 hours in a 24-hour cycle is fantastic. What are your thoughts on 3-day fasts, 5-day fasts, 7-day fasts, etc.?
Yeah. So that you're bringing a great point, and I'm happy to stick on the science so that we cover what we call the typology of fasting. We classify fasting into two groups. Below 2 days, we call it intermittent fasting because it works mainly on metabolism. You have a big calorie deficit, you lose the weight, you improve a lot of things. You address toxins, you talked about the absorption. There's a lot of downstream positive metabolic related impact. And once you cross day two, the stress, so the bank has been depleted, and now the body tells the cells, I cannot, I'm burning fat fast, but we're going into bankruptcy. You got to take action, eat the inside. It tells the cells, eat what you have as debris organelles, and optimize, try to repair and try to optimize or rejuvenate. So I'll give a very simple analogy, and I think we'll explain this. So if you're a CEO of a company and you need $1 million, say, per month to operate, every diet today in the market, or almost most diets, it will give you a little bit less in form of carb control or lower calorie or protein based calorie. And then your bank accounts, instead of giving you $1 million, you get 900,000. There's $1 million deficit. There's $100,000 deficit every month, and your bank account drops. This is how you lose the fat. But by the way, your metabolism also decreases. This is why when you go back and you default on that diet, you're gaining weight super fast. And that's a separate discussion than fasting, but that's critical. Every time you go on a diet, a lot of people slow their metabolism. They end up losing muscle with that, and they're swapping muscle with fat. But anyhow, that's a different discussion. So fasting acts with the stress impact. So imagine you need $1 million as a CEO, and I come to you and say, you know what, you have $0. So you're not going to sit and watch your bank account dropping by million every month. You're going to go and restructure the company, right? You're going to go as a CEO and say, hey, I got to probably let some people go. I'm going to cut some of the investments that are not necessary for the business. I'm going to cut travel budget. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And exactly the same thing happens with the separation between intermittent fasting the first 2 days and then the prolonged fasting, where the stress is too high now on the cells. The body is burning fat fast. The bank account is dropping fast. And the body tells the cell you have to rejuvenate. That's the autophagy part, or what won the Nobel Prize in medicine in 2016. So we like to do that typology. There's a review article in Nature that was published a few months ago only that defines that typology. And so people who go longer in fasting, you said 2 or 3 days. So you go longer, and two things happen. You're depleting your fats. You have bigger metabolic effects. You're losing weight even more. What's beautiful about that mixing of stress of fasting and calorie depletion is you protect your muscle. It's one of the unique diets in the world, fasting, which shows protection of the muscle. Because again, go back to evolution. If there's no food, the body invests into keeping muscle tone up. That's the stress hormones of fasting, so that you hunt or so that you go and find the next food, etc. So one of the beauties about fasting is protecting the muscle and losing fat mainly. So you're crossing on day 3 and you're getting more metabolic effects. but also you start asking the cells to rejuvenate. And we believe that rejuvenation is one of the ways to slow the pace of aging, or biologically to help the cells to rejuvenate. And if that's true, which we see it in mice, and there's a lot of theories in humans, every cell of the body has that push to autocorrect, to auto rejuvenate, and that could be a really good prevention and or healthy aging mechanism. So this is where you get to the healing, the rejuvenation. Now, there's a lot of theories on therapeutic fasting, and this is why some people go to 4 and 5 days. Meaning, if you have a metabolic disease, sometimes even a cellular disease, can fasting help the body cope with this? Can fasting put the body in check and try to do something on these diseases? And a lot of research today on water fasting, trying to see if we can have impacts on health conditions. Now, when you go longer, you're deviating from, we're not designed as humans to sit 3 days and not eat, right? You'll have and your body expresses that. So this comes at a cost. And the cost to the body, again, is the weakness, is the headaches, we don't know if on the long term, there's a bone density, and females, there's a hormone, potential. This is why we as a company, we don't recommend you do water fast for a long period. This is why, again, we go back to our existence, is the National Institute of Health invested in the University of Southern California and us to come and develop a food that nourishes you so that you take off that full-blown pressure on the body, and you help people go a little bit longer on a fasting period, trying to recoup some of the positive without paying the price of full starvation.
Okay, so we've established that intermittent fasting is healthy, especially in the realm of 12 to 14 hours, which seems very natural and based on our anthropology and what we know about ancient humans before refrigerators.
16 to 18 for those who need a short-term correction, right? At overweight or pre-diabetic.
Okay. Yeah, good clarification. And then what are you guys recommending then around long term? Are you recommending a monthly longer term, or what are your if you were to tell someone, hey, here's what I know from the research, let's say a person comes to you and say, well, I want to lose 25 pounds. I'm going to eat better. Tell me how to incorporate fasting into my regimen for 6 months. So I put that question to you. How do you answer that question?
Yeah. So I would definitely ask that if first you need to know the person's age, body weight, other health conditions. Again, we want to intervene and be positive, not damage anything. But imagine it's an ideal person, say it's a 45, 50-year-old person, 40 years old person, just concerned with healthy aging, getting a little bit of weight, getting a little bit stressed.
Yeah, generally healthy, no chronic conditions, really just a little overweight and ready to change things around and be more healthy.
Yeah. So this is a person that could do the 12, 14. It can extend it to 16 in early days for the first couple of months without binging. Again, we theoretically say 16 and 18 as if they're going to lose weight right away. Some people go back and binge into that squeeze 8 hours and eat very unhealthy. So it's very important what to do in that time as well, what to eat, etc. So I would tell the person to do the 12 to 14. I don't want to look biased, but if they want to go longer, 16 or 18, I'll ask them to do fast bar. So we have a bar, we randomized, clinically tested. It's published in Nutrients. Very rarely you see any bar published in top journals and have patents on it. That actually keeps your body in a fasting mode while eating the bar. So you eat the bar, we want to nourish your brain, your heart, all the essential organs, while keeping the pressure of fasting on the metabolism. And so we call it the fast bar. So I would tell that person, do your 12, 14. You want to do 16 and you can do it. If you want some help, it's difficult for you, do the fast bar with it. And I would definitely ask that person in between the feeding period to eat a pescatarian diet or a flexitarian. This is what Mediterranean, flexitarian, pescatarian. I don't know if you know the difference, but basically plant-based with the main source of protein being fish from animal source and sometimes meat. Again, we can go back to the life cycle. If that person is 65, 70, I'll say definitely more flexitarian with some meat. If that person is 40, 50, that's the kind of the pre-disease condition. I will definitely go more pescatarian with that person. Now, if that person wants to do cellular rejuvenation and benefit from that, we as a company, we don't tell people to go 4 or 5 days on water fast, because we have a better thing, which is I'll tell him to do the Prolon, fasting mimicking diets, PROLON. It's food that he or she can consume for 5 days. It's called the fasting mimicking diet. So it keeps your body in a fasting state while you're eating. And 99.9% of people cannot water fast for 5 days. So they can fast with food on 5 days. And this is where we recommend to do the Prolon. If that person is generally healthy just for weight reason, I would just recommend in the span of 6 months to just do 2 cycles only. You don't need to
Okay.
you don't need to do prolonged fasting every month unless you have a major reason to do that. So once a quarter you do Prolon, and then every day you do 12 to 14. If you want to extend it, do the fast bar to extend it.
And that prolonged is how many days you recommending?
The prolonged fasting is a 5 days product. It's a 5 day.
5 days.
Yeah, it's 5 days.
Okay.
Because again, the first 2 to 3 days, the first 2 days, it's metabolic. You lose the weight. Day 3 to 5, you're losing even more weight, but you're also doing the rejuvenation. So for not just weight loss, but for healthy longevity purpose and healthy aging purpose, I would recommend they do the prolonged fasting mimicking diet.
Okay, so let me get a little personal with you, doctor. From all this research, and you're now doing this as your profession, how has this affected your life personally? What is your lifestyle like based on the knowledge that you have gained?
So I do every day the 12, every
Okay.
day. And if I need to go longer, I snack on my, you can see them behind me. I have my fast bar here and I have my fast bar here. There, and you can see the reset. So we have the fast bar up there. This is what I eat for in the morning for breakfast.
What's it called? Fast bar?
Yeah, fast bar. Or
L-Nutra. I'm sorry, what's the name of the company again?
L-Nutra is the name
L-Nutra.
of the company. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And are those bars available commercially anywhere or from your website, or where do we get them?
Website, Amazon, and some retailers, Rayleigh's,
Okay.
Sprouts, etc. It's fast for fasting or fasting bar, or you can buy them online.
Okay,
And
fantastic.
usually I snack on either late at night. My biggest problem is the nights because as an executive and like most people, we're very busy and I stay up at night. So snacking on the bar at night is sometimes I do that. Sometimes I try not to eat anything. And I do Prolon every quarter. So Prolon is this.
Okay.
I don't know if you can see
You
it.
can move around. If you want to grab something and do show and tell, go ahead.
But that's the 5 days. That's the 5 day box.
That's a 5-day box.
Yes.
Okay.
So you have every day in here is marked.
How many bars per day?
This is not just bars. You have bars, soups, the drinks. You have your breakfast, lunch, and dinner in here.
Oh, you have a breakfast, lunch, and dinner
Yes.
from that box for 5 days.
Yes. And it's in the form of bars, soups, teas, drinks, and soups. So, but it's dried. This is why you see the volume. It's condensed and dried, and you just mix it with water and you go with it. And so I do that once every quarter.
Okay, so let's talk about a fasted state. So we've talked about a variety of different aspects of fasting, caloric reduction. I talked about the immune response and being able to fight off bacteria, carcinogens, viruses, etc. And then, of course, blood sugar is a big part of it. Now, when we talk about a fasted state, could you just talk to us like we're in 5th grade?
Yeah.
Maybe a little older than 5th grade, but the basics of what exactly is a fasted state. And then, of course, that will flow naturally into, I want to understand, how do your products keep that fasted state versus
Yeah.
other food?
Yeah.
So let's start with the fasted state.
The fastest state is mostly defined by not the sugar as much as the ketones in the body, right? Because that's a defense that because you can eat protein and not increase blood sugar, but you won't be fasting. You'll be eating proteins, right? So the right correlate of not having carbs and not having protein is actually looking at ketone bodies in the blood and or looking at insulin like growth factor IGF. Or I don't want to get too technical into what gets produced. Whenever you eat sugar or protein, insulin increase and or insulin-like growth factor increase, and the ketones in the blood decrease. So whenever you have ketones high, whenever you have a lower level of insulin, lower level of insulin-like growth factor, it means you haven't eaten sugar, or carbs, or protein lately, and it means you're fasting. This is how we would define it a little bit more if you want.
So do I understand correctly that in a 12 to 14 hour period, we're not really going into full-blown ketosis?
Yes, you're not. Again, we don't want to generalize. If you run in the morning 5 miles and you're thin, you don't have a lot of reserve, and you have high metabolism, you will get into ketosis much faster. So you'll be in ketosis probably in 12, 14 hours. If you have a lot of reserve, you have a lot of glycogen, you have a lot of fat reserve as well, your liver is a little bit fatty and can induce neoglucogenesis. If your metabolic rate is slow and you don't exercise in the morning, you're probably going to need a full day before you get into any level of ketosis.
Okay, so it's
the more money in the bank, the more money you have in the bank, and the less you withdraw from it, the more money it stays in the bank, and the faster, the less money, the less reserves, and the more you spend, you have a high metabolism, the faster you will be in ketosis.
Okay, so the ketosis matters more to you, and from what you've seen from the research, the ketosis is the best marker of identifying a fasted state.
Yes, and in doing 12 to 14 hours, you don't do that typically to get into a deep fasting or to rejuvenation. You do it to have the discipline of a time restricted eating, which has a lot of, by the way, a lot of benefits we don't talk about, and there's a lot of research by Sachin Panda and Mark Mattson about that at Salk and at Hopkins, showing that just mirroring daylight savings, the sun and the night, because when you sleep, very simple, and ask a lot of people that measure their sleep through Oura or others, they tell you whenever we do that 12 to 14, we sleep much better. Well, you're not eating at night. Your entire digestive system is not working, but it's resting. The same way the brain has to rest, the same way the muscle has to rest, the same way our entire digestive system has to rest as well, in which the entire body would be at rest, and you get a better REM, and you get a better sleep, and you get a better next day. And better, that means a better metabolism, being more active, more happy, and it's a positive loop that you get into. So when you do 12 to 14, you're not doing it just to get into ketosis. You're doing it to really go back and match everything in your body, the biological clock, the organs, the system, the homeostasis, all of it to be aligned, and that's powerful for longevity.
Fantastic. However, when we do the Prolon product, it does become much about ketosis for 5 days.
Yes.
And your product doesn't hurt the ketosis because?
That's the secret. So we have 77 ingredients, and for close now to 17 to 20 years, we've been researching that. So basically, and a big thank you for the National Institute of Health, actually. They give a lot of money to us and to University of Southern California, and now 18 other universities. Stanford is studying the fasting mimicking diet, Indiana University, University of Miami, UCLA, and many international universities. And the ingredients are tested to nourish the body without the cellular detectors. The cellulars have what we call nutrient sensing pathways. So the cell senses nutrients, and the cell will tell you if it's satisfied or it's still hungry. And the ingredients are measured in a way to both at the cellular level not trigger the sensing pathways, the nutrient sensing pathways, and at the metabolic level not to spike insulin or not to spike insulin-like growth factor. So to simplify all this, it's like you're the CEO, you need $1 million. I say, okay, I'm not going to give you zero. It's too stressful. There's a lot of side effects. You cannot order your supply for next month. You'll go bankrupt next month. You cannot pay your top employees, right? So I'm going to come and I'm going to give you $400,000 or $500,000. But I'm going to earmark them to pay your best employees. I'm going to earmark them to your supply. And I'm not giving those money for just general sales, marketing, and your trips, et cetera, et cetera. So we earmark, we give, it's not just a calorie balance, but it's an ingredient balance whereby the cells are sensing some of the ingredients without being satisfied.
Okay.
And on the entire metabolic and endocrine level, We don't spike response to sugar, which is the insulin. We don't spike response to protein, which is the IGF or insulin-like growth factor. So at the global recognition, at the full body recognition, the hormones are not spiking. At the cellular level, this nutrient sensing pathways are not satisfied. So we're giving you ammunition, but we're keeping your cells in that protectionist, semi-fasting way.
How many times have you personally done the 5-day protocol that your
You-
company
You've
has?
got to multiply 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. And so you're talking 6 times, almost 25 to 30 times.
Okay. And here's some totally loaded questions, and you just take them however you wish. But at this point, do you kind of dread those 5 days? Do you look forward to the 5 days? What is your emotional response as you prepare for 5 days of this food?
It's a great question in the early times when I start, but now it's part of my, it just, and it depends on the calendar. So when I book it that week, if I have travel, I look forward to it, because the easiest thing, I pick up that one day, I do my soups at the hotel, and I eat my butt, and I'm done.
So it makes life easier.
Yeah, if I'm sitting and I have a wedding and a couple of basketball games or something that are scheduled, and I have to fast, this is what I feel the pain of it. So it depends on the momentum. But my body is what we call now elastic. The first time you do it, you find okay, it's like going to the first time to the gym. You feel the little bit, it's stressful for you. But then the second, third time you do it, it's super easy, and then it just the elasticity, the response, because you're helping your body to shift quickly into ketosis or back from it. And once that's elastic, it's easy to do.
Okay. How about a lot of people report various feelings during an extended fast, from euphoria to lethargy. It can be all over the map. What can the journey be like for people doing your 5-day protocol?
Yeah, I mean, we talked a lot about the science and what happens to the body and metabolic and cell, but actually, when you ask people after they do Prolon, the top 2-3 reasons are feeling reasons they talk to you about. First, they say we changed our relationship with food. And that's part of why it's 5 days. If it was 1-2 days, you just get over it and go back to your lifestyle. But when you do 5 days of a regimen, it's short enough that most people can do it, but it's long enough that you say, you know what, I've never got used to eating this much plant-based or calculated portions, or not snacking late at night. And you say, it gives you a win. If you ask almost every one of your hosts, everyone that's listening to us now, we've all tried diets, and one day you have to stop them, because you don't go and eat the same thing for the rest of your life, the same regimen. So we all develop this learned helplessness. We all feel like, oh, I'm going to start a diet, and what is the day I'm going to default? With Prolon, it's one of the shortest diets ever. It's just 5 days, but it works so fast because fasting is so powerful. So we hear a lot of our consumers saying, for the first time I achieved the diet, I'm positive, and I'm actually learned how to change my relationship with food, and then I can go without my 5 Diet Cokes a day and snacking at 11 p.m. and eating this big steak every day. So that relationship with food is important. The other thing is the energy, is the empowerment, is the positivity, and again, in 5 days, you lost a lot of weight. It's fat mainly. You protect the muscle, and you have a person that feels like, wait a second, something changed in my body. Obviously, every cell is going through the transition. So it's more so emotional than anything else. And I think that was the secret behind spreading Prolon so fast in the US and now in 14 countries. It's short enough that people can do, but it's long enough as 5 days to inspire them for a better lifestyle and better journey in their life.
Okay, now to a point you just made, and this is something I'm very passionate about, is teaching protocols, not diets. Yes. We have our own Dirobi Undiet, which is a lifestyle, not a diet. You're an expert in the debatable subjects of carbs, fats, and protein. At least we don't debate that we need those, but we debate how much of each. Yes. And so the person finishes the 5 days, they've lost some weight, they feel good, they've had the experience you just described. Now, what are you teaching people about carbs, fats, and protein?
Again, I'm a man of science, and I tailor. So if you're 18, I'll give you an answer. If you're 40, I'll give you a different answer. If you're 70, I'll give you a different answer. And again, if you're a man or
Right.
a woman, if you have a BMI, so it's a very, for us, it's a very scientific question, and lifestyle demands are very different. You
Yeah.
need all the proteins, and you can get more animal protein at age, 18, 19, where you still, or 16, 17, and maybe after 65, 70, when you have low absorption. You don't need as many animal source of protein when you're in the 40s and 50s, pre-cardiac, pre-cancer age, right? We don't want to boost the cells at that time. So my
Right.
answer is it depends. But I'll give you like the most common, right?
Okay.
And I'll tailor it for longevity, because we study nutrition for longevity. That's the tagline of our company. If you see behind me, it's nutrition for longevity. So from a longevity perspective, we recommend that you do a pescatarian diet, meaning again plant-based plus the main source of animal protein. You get them from fish, 3-4 times a week. And then if you want to add some meat, you're active, you have an active lifestyle, and you want to add some meat, you can add once or twice, and then you would go to a flexitarian or closer to a Mediterranean diet. So this is the realm that I think we would go for. Go for high source of meat, source of protein. Will, again, depends on the age, but at certain ages is not necessarily a pro longevity diet. Going fully vegan, we've seen a lot of benefits from being vegan, but we haven't seen longevity. Like, we haven't seen centenarians saying, I've never eaten, or I don't eat meat, or I don't eat fish.
Yeah.
So we believe that balance of pescatarian slash flexitarian or closer to Mediterranean is a pro longevity, I would say. Now, again, depends on the person, their priority, their disease profile, their gender, their time, and all of that. But this is the high level of it.
And I like your scientific answer, but the fact is that in the United States anyway, and probably most first world countries,
Yeah.
that I don't care if you're 18 or 70, most people are getting too many crappy sourced carbs, not enough protein, and the wrong type of fat. I mean, I would say that, uh, of course, I agree with your answer. It makes a ton of sense to know who we're talking about. I mean, I do private coaching, right? And so I have a variety of different people that I chat with. So I totally understand. And I like that you prefaced your comments with that. At the same time, though, I think that probably most people fall into the realm of what I said: unhealthy, too many carbs, not enough healthy proteins,
Yeah.
and the wrong kind of fat. And so we're pretty out of whack for the most part as a
No, I
society.
agree. I agree. We made look the palate likes carbs, and a lot of nutrition companies develop food to take advantage of that, and the palate
Right.
likes fat, right? And the healthy fat is expensive: avocados, macadamias, etc. The cheap fat, French fries and oil, etc., is cheap one. So
Right.
historically, for business reasons, a lot of nutrition companies, a lot of food companies, a lot of chains, they have made, for improving their profits, that utilized carbs to attract us, and unhealthy fat, like you're saying, and they put a slender type of meat in between, where it's mostly animal fat source as well. And that's the cheapest food. This is unfortunately also what a lot of
Right.
Americans or other folks can afford. And we don't have a lot of good education. I don't know why in school we get a lot of nonsense education about a lot of nonsense topics, but we don't get a lot of education about our health, about our food. And I still remember the days where it was a big policy win to to force the schools, or to inspire the schools to deliver more plant-based food, and they qualified French fries as plant-based, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so,
Potatoes.
so going back to that, so I fully agree with you. There's definitely, we're definitely consuming more calories than we should. We're definitely timing. Speaking of fasting today, timing of food is important. We were talking only quantity of food historically, and with fasting and time restricted eating, timing of food is important.
Right.
Definitely lower, better quality of fat, and carb control, and a healthy source of protein.
Okay, well, I've kept you longer than I said I would. And so I just have one final thought I'd like you to end on. You've delivered a lot of really great information. I've really liked the conversation. So thank you so much for coming on the show, first of all.
Yeah, for sure.
But my last thing is your company has high level expertise. You are funded by the NIH. You're familiar with the latest science. You're following it. You've got published works that are very popular. And many people resonate when you talk about the blue zones. We got 5 blue zones on the earth where people live to be centenarians more often. And not only that, but it's not just health. They're happier people.
Yeah, exactly.
They have richer lives. They have generational connections that many of us have lost. And so I'd like to end the podcast with your thoughts and some tips or ideas you've learned from your research on the blue zones that you'd like to leave with our listeners.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we call it the 5 pillars of longevity. And again, the longevity diet book touches on those. But 5 pillars of longevity: nutrition. And guess what competes with nutrition and could be equally important is social capital, that happiness, that connectivity like you talked about, your family, your loved ones, your relationship with your wife, your kids, your mother, your father. That social capital creates a lot of happiness, which is as powerful almost as nutrition. We consider those as the top 2. Then you have exercise and stress and sleep. And this is what I work on. So take care of your sleep, quality and quantity. You have to stress less, and life, doesn't help. Every time we discover something, we're so excited about it. A new phone, and you this, but then you have to respond faster to now your text and your message and your DM so life is bringing a lot of micro stresses, and that serenity, that level of happiness throughout the day we're losing that. We're just living stress and joy. And sleep, as I mentioned, exercise definitely, nutrition, and social capital. So these are the 5 most impactful pillars for longevity.
Okay, I love that. Well, again, thanks so much for taking the time. And by the way, just remind everyone where they can find your products. They're very intriguing. They sound fantastic for anyone who's interested in fasting, which is becoming almost everyone who's interested in health.
Yes.
They ought to know where to find your products. So
yeah.
How do they find it?
The company is L-Nutra, longevity through nutrition. You can see that behind me. You can read more about the company, about our research, and get a synopsis about our products. But we have 4 main products. Prolon, we talked about the 5-day fasting mimicking diet, so prolonfast.com. Fast bar for intermittent fasting, and Prolon Reset, the 1-day fast. We haven't talked a lot about it, but we have a product. You eat the same nutrition for 1 day, gives you the benefits of 1-day fast. It's called Prolon Reset. And then we have nutrition for longevity. We do have a company that ships healthy food every day. There's a clean food, longevity formulation, and medically tailored. It's called nutritionforlongevity.com. So these are our 4 products in the market today: Prolon Reset, Fast Bar, and Nutrition for Longevity.
Well, fantastic. Sounds like a great work that you guys are doing. And I'm so happy you take the time to be on my show. You've helped me understand. I thought I knew a lot about intermittent fasting and prolonged fasting, but I've learned several things from you. Fantastic. And I'm sure my listeners have as well. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Okay. And for those of you listening, this is Dave Sherwin wishing you health and success.